I'm here in Hong Kong, on the Peak, where in 1973 a shot was filmed from this very spot to play under the opening credits of the martial arts classic, Enter the Dragon. That movie remains the one by which all other kung fu movies are judged, and it's the movie that put Bruce Lee firmly on the worldwide cinema stage. Now CNX takes you behind the cameras for an exclusive look, on location, Enter the Dragon, Hong Kong. Check it out. This is Castle Peak Temple, where the opening scenes of Enter the Dragon were shot. The first guy we see Bruce Lee fight in the movie is a slimmed-down version of Sammo Hung, who would later find international fame as the star of the CBS TV series Martial Law. The abbot, ironically enough, is played by Roy Chow, a committed Christian who's here playing a Buddhist monk. You can also see Roy menacing Harrison Ford at the beginning of the movie Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Then there's the young boy that Bruce Lee teaches a lesson to. He's played by Stephen Dong Wai, who would later find greater fame behind the camera as the action director on films like, would you believe, Scooby-Doo and the more recent Bulletproof Monk. Enter the Dragon was like the starting position for a whole generation of Hong Kong martial arts movie talent. Where this modern development now thunders up to the sky, there once stood the mighty Golden Harvest Studios, where all of the interiors for Enter the Dragon were shot. There used to be an old shanty town just down there. And that was where the fight scene was shot between Angela Mao Ying and O'Hara's thugs. Angela Mao Ying was a Taiwanese native, an expert in Chinese opera who made the move to making martial arts movies. Although she's best known internationally for playing Bruce Lee's sister in Enter the Dragon, she had a successful solo career at Golden Harvest, filming movies like When Taekwondo Strikes and Hapkido. She's now happily retired, married, and lives in Los Angeles. This is the Cape Collinson Cemetery, where at the beginning of Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee comes to pay his respects at the graves of his sister and mother. You may notice in the scene that Bruce is wearing a very sharp grey suit. This was something that Robert Clouse wanted to bring to Lee's character in the film. He was somebody who would be equally at home in any environment. So at the beginning we see him at the Shaolin Temple, and later in the modern metropolis of Hong Kong. This was different from the earlier Golden Harvest films Bruce had made, where he was depicted very much as the country bumpkin. Director Robert Clouse wanted a martial arts hero who would also be a man of the world. Behind me is the Hyatt Hotel in Kowloon, and it was a suite in this building that provided the offices for Mr. Braithwaite in Enter the Dragon. Braithwaite himself was played by Jeffrey Weeks, who was then head of programming at Hong Kong's Radio 3. Several months after Enter the Dragon wrapped, he went home at lunchtime and was later found dead in his bed. Another victim of the curse of the dragon? We'll never know. This is Aberdeen Harbour, and it's from here that the junk sails to the island of Mr. Han, carrying with it the competitors to the tournament. It's also here that we see for the first time our three leading men, the displaced riverboat gambler Roper, played by John Saxon, Soul Brother number 1, Williams, played by Jim Kelly, and Bruce Lee, played by Bruce Lee. In fact, two of the three were second choices for their respective roles. Originally, the man cast as Roper was William Smith, a towering American actor who'd been in dozens of Roger Corman biker flicks and is now best known for playing the father of Conan the Barbarian in the film of the same name. Unfortunately, Smith is way over 6 feet tall, and when Bruce Lee found out, he decided the disparity in their sizes on screen was too much to handle. He hired the more regularly proportioned John Saxon instead. The Jim Kelly role originally was intended for a black actor named Rockne Tarkington, but the night before production was about to commence, Tarkington called up producer Fred Weintraub and said he felt he was being exploited. Tarkington was out, Jim Kelly was in, and as far as I can make out, Rockne Tarkington was never heard from ever again. The movie is very much Bruce Lee's in front of and behind the camera. To see the huge leap forward he made in terms of martial arts movie making, you need only look at the other films made by Robert Clouse, or indeed the Hong Kong martial arts films also made during 1973. Clouse himself brought an American sensibility to the film in that he wanted to fill it with as much local color as possible. The building behind me is on Stubbs Road here on Hong Kong Island. It provided the exterior for Han's Fortress. The interiors are all shot up at the Golden Harvest Studios. Mr. Han himself is played by Sek Gin, veteran of over 500 local Cantonese movies. he doesn't actually speak any English, so he learned his lines phonetically as best as he could. And then on the set, production manager Madeleine Chan would lie down out of shot, reading the script, and he would answer her back line by line. She would go, gentlemen. He would go,
gentlemen.
Welcome.
Welcome.
You honor our island.
You honor our island.
And so on. The film was then taken to America, and Mr. Han's lines were looped by the late Ki Luke, an actor who played Master Po on the Kung Fu TV series. It all works wonderfully well, and most of the people in the audience are not aware that Mr. Han is not actually speaking English. It's at this very stone jetty that Bruce Lee and his fellow competitors arrived to take part in the tournament organized by Mr. Han. And Han's tournament itself takes place right up there, on what once tennis courts leading up from the sea up to a manor house below. The land itself was owned by Mr. Low, of a prominent legal family, Low and Low. When Bruce came to shoot the sequences here, he actually sat down with Mr. Low, and they found out, to both of their surprise, that they were actually distant relatives. If you watch the end fighting sequence very carefully, you can actually see the white demarcation points of a tennis court. And these are those tennis courts on which the final battle sequences of Enter the Dragon were shot. And some of the blood spilt here was real. The fight between Bruce Lee and Bob Wall as the evil O'Hara was filmed right over there. And the finale of the fight sequence sees Bruce kick 2 bottles out of Bob Wall's hands. In an American movie, it would have been sugar glass, but not in Hong Kong. At that time, they were using real bottles. Oh! And one of them sliced through Bruce's hand. He had to be rushed to a hospital, his hand bleeding profusely. The only hospital available was right on the other side of this mountain behind me. There was another day on which Bruce actually got to show his real martial arts prowess. We was doing a break in production, and Bruce and the other cast and crew members were goofing around down here. There was a row of extras sitting on this wall behind me. One of them jumped down and says, "Bruce Lee, are you really that good?" And Bruce says, "Are you ready?" And then his foot moved faster than the eye could follow, and before anybody could react, the extra opened his mouth and blood and teeth fell out one side. Examples, really, of the speed and power of the real martial arts skill of Bruce Lee, and it happened right there, on the killing fields from Enter the Dragon. Behind me is 218 Nathan Road, where now stands this glass and chrome shopping mall that was once a humble tenement building. In that building lived Lei Hoi Chun, a famous Cantonese comic star, and his wife, Grace, his daughters, Agnes and Phoebe, and his sons, Peter, Robert, and Bruce. Bruce Lee grew up in that family home and was immediately exposed to several of the key elements that would define his later career. For one thing, his father was a martial arts practitioner, studying the Chinese system of Tai Chi, Tai Get Kwoon. So Bruce was instantly aware of the benefits of lifelong martial arts training. He also saw any number of actors and directors coming and going, so he picked up elements of comedy, of Chinese opera, of drama. He felt the lure of the silver screen. All of this was an example of how the child would later become the man. Behind me is Francis Xavier College, where the young Bruce Lee was a student. At that time, he was already well known as a child actor working in Cantonese black and white melodramas. However, he wasn't appearing in action films. It was while at school that he was exposed to 2 Western martial arts that would influence his later development. Bruce's elder brother, Peter, was an Olympic-class fencer. It's from him that Bruce Lee experienced the stop-hit principle that had become a key element of Bruce's own style, Jeet Kune Do. It's also little known, but Bruce actually was a boxing champion in Western boxing while at school. And if you look at his later movies, you actually see him employ many boxing techniques, as well as the classical movements of Chinese martial arts. This is Late Act Street, former site of the Yip Man Wing Chun Kung Fu School. And it was here that Bruce Lee learned his first classical martial arts system, Wing Chun. According to legend, Wing Chun was first devised by a Buddhist nun, Moy, who taught it to a beautiful young woman, Yim Wing Chun, from whom the style got its name. It devolved down from the Shaolin Temple to the southern city of Fa San, which was Yip Man's hometown. Yip Man moved to Hong Kong, where he taught Wing Chun to many students, of whom Bruce Lee is by far the most famous. We can still see the particular trapping and striking techniques of Wing Chun, both in Bruce Lee's own style, Jeet Kune Do, and in the fight scenes from the films that made his name. This is Boundary Street in Kowloon. It is on the rooftops of buildings like the one behind me that Bruce Lee and his fellow students from the Wing Chun Kung Fu style would engage in challenge matches with representatives from other Chinese martial arts systems, primarily Choi Lei Fut Kung Fu. It was this exposure to real-life combat that added that extra tang of realism to the fight sequences Bruce Lee would later craft for his martial arts movies. Here in the bustling heart of the Tsim Sha Tsui area, we find the Tung Ying Building, formerly housing the offices of the Golden Harvest Film Company. And it was here that Bruce signed the contracts for his first Hong Kong martial arts movie, The Big Boss. Golden Harvest was so keen to bring Bruce Lee on board, they actually stuck him in a film that was already in production in Thailand. The star of that film was James Chen Jun. He, poor fellow, got pushed aside and was stuck with second fiddle roles for the rest of his career. When the movie was released in Hong Kong, it was a huge breakout success. It put both Bruce Lee and Golden Harvest on the map.
You want to fight? I'll take you on.
They rushed into production with another film, Fist of Fury. In this film, Bruce really showed all that he could do in terms of multiple kicks, using the nunchakus, and bringing in an American fighter to fight him in the final reel, his American student, Bob Baker. This film was an even greater hit. Bruce sat down with producer Raymond Chow to renegotiate their contract. From now on, all the films he made with Chow would be partnership productions. Raymond would represent Golden Harvest, and Bruce, his own newly formed company, Concord Productions. The first film from this new team will be Lee's directorial debut, Way of the Dragon. All of the interiors for Way of the Dragon were filmed at the Golden Harvest Studios, which once stood right behind me. This included the scene supposedly set in the Colosseum in Rome, in which Bruce Lee fought Chuck Norris to the death. Chuck would later find international fame as the star of Walker, Texas Ranger. At Golden Harvest, there were concerns about the commercial prospects of Way of the Dragon, which was more of a comedy than Bruce's earlier films had been.
They needn't have worried. Way of the Dragon was the biggest hit in the history of Hong Kong cinema. Its success allowed Bruce to move out from this modest building in Ho Man Tin.
This was the Lee family home at 41 Cumberland Road. Not much by Hollywood standards, but for Hong Kong of the 1970s, a palace. The whole place was packed with Bruce's workout equipment, and he'd go running down these streets in the early hours. More importantly, it was a refuge for Bruce and his family from the high-pressure world of Hong Kong show business.
And it was in this house that Bruce Lee devised his unfinished masterpiece, Game of Death. He suspended production on that film to shoot the movie that would make him a household name around the world, Enter the Dragon.
This is the Miramar Hotel in Tsim Sha Tsui, which used to house Bruce Lee's favorite Japanese restaurant. It was here that former James Bond George Lazenby and producer Raymond Chow waiting for Bruce to have dinner with them on the evening of July 20th, 1973. Bruce was never to arrive. It was here that Raymond Chow received a phone call telling him that Lee was unconscious and unresponsive at the home of actress Betty Ting Pei.
Chow called his own doctor, who rushed to attend to Bruce at the building in Beacon Hill. Bruce was finally rushed to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, where tragically he was declared dead on arrival.
This is the Kowloon Funeral Parlour in Yau Ma Tei. And in 1973, it played host to one of the saddest days in the history of Hong Kong, in the history of martial arts, in the history of action cinema, the funeral of the late, great Bruce Lee. All these years on, speculation still runs rampant as to what actually caused the death of Bruce Lee. My own theory is that through fair means or foul, he was poisoned by tainted cannabis. Bruce was a habitual cannabis user, and it's been overlooked that months before the actual event that killed him, Bruce had been struck down by a very similar attack. He'd fallen unconscious at Golden Harvest Studios and was very near death when he was rushed to hospital. On that occasion, doctors managed to save him. On the evening on which he lost his life, he was at a location where he was not as readily accessible and therefore did not receive the appropriate care and attention until it was too late. In the end, though, it should be remembered that how Bruce Lee lived his life is far more important than how he lost it. Bruce Lee remains Hong Kong's favourite son, and it's remarkable that 30 years on, there is as yet no permanent memorial to him anywhere in the city. Regardless, he lives on in the hearts and minds of thousands of fans here and millions more around the world. A remarkable figure, a man who went from life to legend in the space of just 32 short years. CNX celebrates the martial artistry, the magic, the man that was Bruce Lee.